I'm AJ Vanek, and welcome back for episode 7 of Dungeon Masters Inc. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about world building. So world building, first off, is a lot of fun for DMs that really get into world building. I really enjoy world building because it lets me customize the places that the characters are going to be in. Now, a lot of box sets, it's good to play with, sets that are already, built where the world's developed. And a lot of times that's fun too, particularly if you're implementing modules that are already set in those worlds. Using those worlds makes a lot of sense. But at a certain point, every DM wants to make their own world, wants to totally customize it. And there's a lot of pitfalls you can make if you don't do it right. So today, everything we're going to talk about is world building. Now, the first thing when you get a world is kind of, sometimes decide whether you have a campaign in mind or not. A lot of times when I build a world, there really is no specific campaign goals that are set just yet. I might have a base idea, but if you do have one, then that's great, because when you build your world, you can make it evolve to your campaign storyline. Like we talked about in campaigns, if you know where your story is going, you really know in your world what to build in order to support that goal. And that way everything drives towards the goal of your campaign. But if you're building a world from scratch, there's several things you want to do, and you want to do first. So I've designed a lot of worlds in my time. And one of the things I always suggest is that people start with just kind of sketching what they want. It can be rough. You don't have to be an artist or anything. It can be quite, rough and dirty. It's really just to get a feel for where you want things like your land formations and any oceans, the large bodies of water. Now, if you already have a campaign in mind and you know where your characters are going to start, then that makes it easy. You can start at a smaller level and just build out around them. But for the most part, you kind of want to understand their placement within the bigger scheme. So, for example, one of the worlds that I created was a world that was mostly comprised of water. There was going to be a lot of sailing in this campaign. A lot of pirates, high seas, that kind of a thing. And so I just started doodling. I went ahead and made like a world map, right? Just kind of top and bottom like any other map. And then I decided, I wanted a landmass. So I wanted the largest landmass to be somewhat northern, right? And I also wanted, another island down here to be kind of maybe where some ruffians lived. So it was a pretty good sized landmass, and there was going to be some stuff there. But I also kind of wanted this jungle island that was going to be out here. It was another mysterious place. And then I wanted some small little places like atolls, some sand shelves, sandbars where the water was really, really low. Maybe that's where some people did some mining, or maybe some salt flats that you're just barely underwater where ships could get stuck. And maybe even though there's some pirate coves with some little bitty islands kind of around it. I had to kind of navigate through, right? So that, and then an Arctic region. I wanted an area up north to basically be, cold, and it would be kind of a large landmass up north. So it started very, very simple. And that's how basically you get started. Once you've kind of done that, the next thing you want to do is you want to start thinking about, just some of the basics, the names. What's the name of the world? What's the name of this landmass? What's the name of this region? What do they call the ocean or the sea? Is it known by different names? Your base naming gets started right away. As soon as you start creating them, you want to start naming them. That way, you already have it in your thought process. When you start thinking about other things, this is what the people call these areas, and you can start to refer to them. So that's the first thing I usually do. Get that sketch out of the way. Give yourself basically some orientation of where some things are going to be. And then we'll dive a little bit further. So now that I kind of have the lay of the land, if you will, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zero in more where the PCs are probably going to start if I have something in mind. That's where I'm going to start thinking about larger establishments like towns and cities. These are main areas that PCs always interact with, right? Towns and cities, they go there for various and sundry reasons. But what I'm going to think about when I think about these towns and cities is I'm also going to begin to think about the technology level or the magic level. And when I think about the magic level, I want to think about it in terms of spell levels. So I'll look at the player's handbook and I'll start to decide, what kind of spells, are common, what are used, what are not used. Maybe the world as it sits doesn't understand magic or much about magic past, the second spell level. Maybe it's a wondrous place, and maybe, magic spells up to sixth level are found, in and around cities. But I want to think about that technology level. I want to think about the magic level. Is wind power the dominant power? Are we kind of steampunking a little bit? Do we use steam? What are these other things that people have developed? How long have these civilizations been around? Which often kind of tells you, how's their technology evolved. So I look at the towns and I look at the cities to drive it, because these are going to be the places that have the highest peaks of technology and magic, more than likely. And again, as I'm doing it, I go ahead and start to name them. I just go ahead and give them names. And I want to start thinking about their populations, because you can have really big cities and really small cities, but they're still classified as cities. And the Dungeon Master's Guide will give you some numbers to help you size your city. Towns as well. Towns can be very big or very small. For the most part, villages and shires, hamlets, their windows of populace are very, very small, so I don't really think about those at first. I'm going after the big fish right now. At the same time, I'm thinking about continents and kingdoms. Are these towns ruled by continents or kingdoms? How are they grouped logically? Or is one island broken into 4 pieces? Or is it ruled all by the same people? These are the things I'm starting to think about now. How are they divided? Or how are they allied? Which is the other way to look at it. Because conflict's always fun. Putting conflict into your world in some form or fashion gives you a lot of campaign hooks, a lot of story hooks. And so you can go ahead and start thinking about that as you start to name these things. So that's the next thing I'm looking at, towns and cities. So now that I've gotten some towns and cities, what I do want to think about, like I mentioned before, are some of the motifs, the technology level. Does this town have a technology level? Are they very military-like? Is this town have a lower technology level? Are they farmers? Are they tradesmiths? What are the towns known for? One town close to mountains might be known for mining, where another town that is basically, close to plains is known for farming. What are they known for? What are the goods and services that they excel in? And I usually make a note by each town of these are the goods and services that excel at this town. One might be based on silver. Another might be based on copper. Another one might be based about art and culture, where another may be farming. And then some towns that are kind of in between large establishments, I make them known for trade. And that's when I start to think about roads, trade routes. How do things move between these towns and cities? And so that framing starts to happen. Now, in a city, in a world kind of like a water world, those are going to take place on each island. And I'll start where the PCs are first, and I'll start to kind of, draw it out. Here's where this road, this is the North Road, this is, the West Road. And I give them pretty simple names at first, and sometimes simple names are the best, because that's what a lot of people called things back in the day, just by a very simple name of what it was known for. The Silver Mining Trail, things like that. So next, trade routes and, motifs. What are these places known for? That's where I go next once you have your towns and cities. So the next thing I kind of think about once I have that down is I'm thinking about the races. What are the races that are going to be involved in this world? In some campaigns, some worlds, you take a world or a campaign setting like Spelljammer, where just about every race possible, or the plains, just about everything is open. I do find, those they're pretty cool if you're really like a really big, huge mixed bag. Um, but I also like to have cultures, and if I have, and I'm trying to cater to every single race out there, that can be very, very difficult. So in some of the worlds that I design, it's very specific about what types of races are there. Particularly, what types of races are what I would call the PC races, or the ones that are occupying the towns and cities and villages and that kind of a thing, and not just the monsters. Now, the monsters may be out there and different, um, but I'm really thinking about the PC races. Where are the dwarves from? Where are the halflings from? Do they have to be from anywhere in particular? Maybe they grew up in a mishmash bag and they all come from this area, right? But some stereotypes a lot of players and a lot of DMs stick with: dwarves with mining, elves with art and culture, halflings, tobacco ales, things like that. And it makes a lot of sense on the map, or where the towns and cities of where they might come from, based upon these cultural things that some of these races are known for. Obviously, if you have a water planet and you're using races like aquatic elves or Darthellan, things like that, they could come from a specific area, or they could be a mixed bag. At the same time, you can also kind of discuss or think about your rarity. How rare are elves? Are elves very popular in the world and they're all over the place, or are elves more mystical in nature and mysterious because there's so few? One of the current campaigns I run is elf is a rare race. Now, PCs can play an elf, but it's one of those in a town or in a city. You may find, two, maybe three at most. They're just very, very rare. Kind of adds a little mystery. In some places they're treated a little bit different because of who they are, what they look like, what's part of their cultural history in this world. So I'm thinking about the races, I'm thinking about their history, and I'm thinking about their rarity. And as I look at the towns and cities, I'm kind of deciding where those fit. It also fits with, what the cities are known for. Cities known for art, elves are probably a really good race to go there. If it's known for mining, dwarves. Nature aspects, farming, cultivating, brewing, tobacco, halflings. If it's a technology city, maybe gnomes. However you want to play it. But that's usually where I go next. I'm thinking about the races, and at the same time, I'm also thinking about the currency. How does the races also dabble in their currency? Are we just going to use, gold, silver, platinum, copper? Are we going to use something else? Currency is a little kind of on the side. I think about that a little bit with towns and cities as well. But I also think about the races. What do they trade in? Some may trade in art. Some that might be just what they like to do. It may be a very barter system type of economy that you're going to use, and that's cool too. But town, cities, and then I kind of go into the races as well as their rarities. Okay, now the next one's a fun one. This one's always a lot of fun. Deities and pantheons. What deities, what pantheons am I going to use? Now, the easy way is to go ahead and just use a pantheon that's already out there. You can even rename them if you want, but you're basically using the same template. Forgotten Realms has a ton of very detailed material that's written about their deities, as well as Greyhawk and some of the other worlds that are already out there. But if you're going to make your own, which is a lot of fun, remember this, and this is basically true for every pantheon and deity system out there. Dungeons and Dragons really looks at deities through the eyes of their domains. It's the domains that are important, because these are usually linked to the clerics, the paladins, and things like that, as how they get their spells. So it's domain power, really. And Forgotten Realms had a way of calling domains portfolios, if anybody remembers that. And in some instances, they still kind of do. But it's the domain. So a deity can have domains of law, or it can be something elemental like the sun or the moon. It can also be life, or it can be good, it can be evil, it can be neutrality, balance, justice, hunting, nature, beasts, the sea. All of these different things are basically in domains. And you can find these domains that are actually out there. Actually, just kind of perusing through a lot of the cleric material will give you ideas of domains. And that's where you want to concentrate. What deities are in control of what domains? Now, there's several ways to do your pantheons and deities. That's to actually have a singular deity who controls domains. But there's an inverted way, and one of the ways that I actually like to use, and a lot of players appreciate it because a lot of players really like certain pantheons of their own. In one of the worlds that I have, domains are more energies and powers, and how they manifest is really up to the believers. So that way you can integrate systems like the Norse deities or the Greek mythology deities, as well as the O-Earth deities and the Forgotten Realms deities, and deities from just about anywhere, because it's the domain that actually drives the power, and the manifestation of that worship is what the player sees. It's what the character sees, right? So, while one might see Tempest, the other one might see Thor. Same domains, essentially. But two different manifestations of those energies. Just another option to put out there. It makes it really easy as far as trying to name your deities, and instead stay focused on the domains. Now, at the same time you're thinking about those deities, think about their history. How did they come to be? This may be something you want to tackle. I usually want to think about it at least in some kind of overarching way. Were they always here? Did something happen to bring them here? How intertwined is the pantheon into maybe the story I'm going to tell from a campaign perspective? But a lot of that can also be combined with how old you figure your world is. When you're thinking your technology level. How did the deities come to be? How are deities created? What happened? These little backstories and information can actually weave into some of your modules and some of the things that you're going to have the characters do. And it adds a lot of flavor. It really helps bring your world to life. If you can drop little tidbits about, how did the deities get here? What caused this one to be this way, perhaps, and things like that. Now, if you're really going to run some, kind of deity, like a deity war, there's two sides that are fighting. Maybe it's the moon and the sun. Water, fire, whatever like that. You really want to get into those aspects of the deities, their motivations, what drives them, how they were chosen, things like that. Because it'll really add a lot of flavor to the story that you're weaving on the campaign side. So think about the history of the deities, their purposes, and their role within the world. Okay, so now that you got the map laid out, you got the deities kind of set, you can set the deities to the side. Now I go in and I fill in the gaps. I got a big city here. Maybe I want some towns here. I want a place of interest here. I want a haunted woods over here. Now I'm looking for these little nuggets that, characters can be lured to, or things that maybe have relevance within this world. Maybe there's a volcano that's very particular to this world. Where does that volcano at? What's its purpose? What did it do? And as I place these things, that's what I'm thinking about, and that's what I'm jotting down next to, my notes. Is I'm writing, this is the haunted woods. Nobody goes here. This is why. Or this is the great wood. This is where this certain type of oak comes from that everybody's houses are built out. That's why trade comes out of here, mostly with oak wood, and most of the houses and construction you see are built of oak. It's these things that start to drive, little motivations and economy. It gives the world breath. It gives it, rounds it, and it gives it polish. And you're filling in these small gaps. And it doesn't take a whole lot of effort. As you kind of build these things, maybe it's a group of hills or crags. Maybe it's some windswept mountains. What makes them unique? Why is it it is here? Does it have a secret about it? Is this a layer of something? It can be a DM note, and it can be a PC note. Maybe the PCs know that, up in these hills, there's these very large birds that nobody goes up here because they snatch them up and they take them away and they get eaten. Maybe there's some rocks up there. Who knows? Things like that. So now I'm filling in the gaps. I'm going in between the cities and I'm filling in those small gaps. And this is also where I'll add things like lakes and rivers. As I'm looking at the trade routes, maybe some trade routes are by river, maybe it's by lake and things like that. So these are the things in between that I'm going to start to fill in. Very important, because these things are things that could be on a map that your players are going to see, they're going to encounter, and they'll probably have questions about. If it's on a PC map, a lot of times I'll keep a DM map, which is for myself. It has a lot of the secrets hidden, and I have a PC map that the PCs know. This is what the PCs kind of know from people who've traveled the world and charted the world, and this is the common acceptance of the way it is. So that's one thing you can do is kind of have a DM map and have a PC map. But as a DM, if you know where these secrets are, then again, you're going to be able to start weaving these into backstories. And again, it just puts more flesh on the bone when you're starting to talk to characters about their experiences when they're in these towns and the cities. And we'll get to that in just a second, how that can really come into play. But yeah, the gaps are important. Don't leave out the gaps. That's usually what happens after I've got the cities and towns laid out, and I've already thought about the deities. So temples, lost temples, always a great one. Put some lost temples around there, shrines, dungeons, things like that. Good flavor to add to any world. Okay, last couple of things are kind of big. The first one, where do the bad guys live? Right? Is there an orc nation? Where are they? Do kobolds come from an area? Is this area ruled by gnolls or dragons or giants? Where do the bad guys live? They can have towns. Sometimes I've actually put known towns on a world map, like a goblin city. I know Tolkien did this. Other authors have done it. Other writers, map makers, and whatnot have actually put, where people know this town is overrun by goblins. It's there. It's huge. So nobody goes there. That's part of, that's part of the whole world story. Maybe there's a large conflict between, humans, elves, dwarves, and goblins. It's definitely something you can have. Where do the bad guys live? That's what I want to start to figure out. And after I kind of have that, now I've kind of filled in the gaps and I want to polish everything, right? So polishing everything kind of goes back over everything you've done. You start to look at the cities again. Now, is this city a clean and neat city? Is it a dirty city? Who's it ruled by? What are the politics of this area? Is the High King or a group of nobles, or is it a circle of elected officials, town council maybe? And do they have a militia? Are they known for underhanded things? Or is this town militaristic, very just, very true? Or maybe they're too just and too true, almost to the point of like inquisitions or something. Maybe they've tipped it a little too far, to where their seeking of justice is just push that envelope, way too far the other direction. Adding that polish, who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? Within the towns, so this is your crime bosses. These are your guilds. These are your, merchant orders. Maybe you have a college of magic. Who runs it? Key names. I like to go through, and in a town I like to write notable NPCs and places. Here's the inn, here's the tavern, here's, it could be a shrine, it could be a church, it could be, maybe a trading post that's just real popular in the land. These are the next little details I'm adding to each location as I kind of go through. And I'll do them all at once. I'll do all the inns, and I'll just go from town to town, and here's the name of the inn, here's who runs it, here's the race that they are and their age. And at the same time, I'm trying to think about their persona. What's this guy like? Is he big and boisterous? Is he, quiet, grumbly, or is he, very off-putting? He runs it because he makes money, but he just really doesn't like people. So this is the polish that starts to give not just your whole world life, but specific areas, because this is the nitty-gritty. This is where your PCs are going to be interacting. They're going to be interacting with the barkeep at the Golden Lion Tavern in the city of Glissondale. How do those three things line up? The other thing, as well as, major NPCs. Is this Baron so-and-so, is he just a really bad dude, runs a corrupt militia, or is this Circle of Council, you can have a high person that's appointed as more of a custodian of the entire city. Who are these people? Who are these notable NPCs? So I'll also have an area of notable NPCs, who they are, what they do, what makes them notable. So that way, and even NPCs that are, parts of guilds, particularly guilds that, if I know the characters have already made, if I know the players have already made their characters, I know they have a ranger and a druid, well, then I may have a hunter's guild. I may have somebody who's in charge of that guild. If they have a rogue, I'm thinking about the rogues guild at this point. Where is it? How does it operate? I love guilds. I think guilds add a lot of flavor, and can provide a lot of motivations to NPCs. When we were talking about campaigns, we kind of talked about the encouraged railroad. Guilds are a great way to help encourage PCs to kind of go where you want them to. So once I have that, the last thing I'm looking at is rumors. Love rumors, especially if rumors have purpose and they're not just fluff stuff that you've thrown in. I always like my rumors to have some semblance of truth. I know the old school modules had rumors that were totally true, totally false. But the way I think about rumors is there's some semblance of truth. Something had to spur the story to get around. Now, how accurate it got around, that's where that ambiguity lies. But you may have rumors like, for example, one of my favorite rumors I had is there was a forest where there were these large boulders in the forest, and the rumor was that a giant would come and move them around. And so people thought that there was a large giant that lived in this forest. And people would go to the forest and they would see that these rocks had been moved around. Well, it turned out there was no giant at all, but the rocks were Galebdurs. So which are basically living rocks and entities, and they would just get up and walk around by themselves. But it had a semblance of truth. And the party and the players were actually kind of interested in this at one point, and then they had a mission to go through this forest, and they had already heard the rumor, so they were very much on the lookout for a giant. And when they came across the large rocks, they were in for quite the surprise. But they had solved the mystery of that rumor, and when they went back to town, they kind of got some renown for kind of setting the story straight, which was great. They loved it. They were like, "Oh, this was really good because we got to be able to tell people that what we learned, and kind of get recognized for it." And I get into renown systems in another episode. But rumors are really good, particularly if they have purpose, and you can design a rumor table of your own. I'll probably cover rumor tables and building rumors and how to do that in a different episode. But that is the last thing I kind of doing when I'm world building, is now I'm starting to think about, how are these rumors going to hint to these secret places that I have? And a lot of these can be side quests, or they could be just areas where the party is going to move through, and so that these rumors are dropped in about these areas. Again, gives it flavor, gives it life. Makes your world more living and robust when you can give some micro details about places and things, and kind of add to the mystery, which is one of the best parts about kind of designing your own world, is it really puts the players where they're kind of behind the eight ball when it comes to the mystery. They just can't open the box set and start reading and use out of character info, for their characters, because there is no in the box material for them to read. Apart from what you give them, which will kind of lead to my next segment. But rumors, this last thing again is the polish. So populations, the cleanliness, dirtiness of a city, its corruption, the races, where they live, and major places, secret places, rumor tables. That's all the polish. So now that you kind of got all these things sketched out, you've fleshed this other stuff out, let's make some really cool stuff. So I'm going to share with you a couple of links. But one of the best map makers out there that I like is Incarnate. Incarnate maps can be super highly detailed. It's pretty easy to use. They're inexpensive. You can just get a very short subscription, build your map, and kind of be done with it. You don't have to keep renewing. And again, build what you're going to need, right? So if you only need a valley or half of a world, then just build half of a world. You don't have to design the whole thing in high detail. But I highly recommend Incarnate for maps. The other one I like, I don't know who did it personally, but it's called Watabu Village Generator. And I'll put the link, make sure and add the link below. But it's a cute little program. It's online. You just put in some specs and you kind of pop out a town, a city, a village. It can be coastal. Do you want fields? Do you want trees? Very cool little tool. And then just take a screenshot, and I use that to give to the players to basically show them, here's the village, here's the city, here's the town. And then I'll go through, and if I've actually done the detailed work of what's in that town, like an inn or tavern, then I'll just use some tools to basically put some little numeric markers on the village, and basically show where is the Golden Lion Inn? It's right here. Where is the tavern? It's over there. Things like that. Again, it adds, maps add flavor. It gives an orientation to the PCs of where things are, how big things look, what's travel actually look like. They can measure it out. If you have a scale on your map, you can tell it now takes, 18 days to get from point A to point B. It takes 9 by horse, things like that. Maybe it's faster to travel by water. It gives the players these options now, and they can actually start to look and think about their travel on their own, which is great. It's what anybody would do given all of the information. And since you have given it to them, now they're free to kind of, change how they want to operate, which is really, really good. Again, breathing more life into the campaign, more realism, more backdrop. So Incarnate and Watabu, and I'll put those links below. So those will both be there. Okay, so the last thing to talk about is how do you get the material to your players, right? So I've done it several ways. I've used, just online Microsoft Word and then put it into a PDF. And then, I've just put it up on a share and let them access it there. I've used WordPress to build a website and put it up there, just kind of update it as I go. I've also used, being a UX designer by nature, it's actually, what I've done for a living for 26 years. I use some UX software to basically build a prototype website, which looks and functions just like a website, but it's so much easier for me to update. And I just give the share link to my players. So they can just flip through it like any old website, except it's highly customizable because it's basically a prototype software that has an access point on the web. So WordPress, PDFs, Facebook is another great one because you can use the forums, you can upload the images, you can keep a lot of content there in folders. That's another really good one. But all of these places are good as long as your players can access it. And obviously, print material. You want to print out a map and have it there so players can pass it around and look at it. But keeping some kind of living file of your world where your players can get to it and they can read up on it and they can check it out. Because in between sessions, that's what they want to do. And the more they learn about their world, the more immersion that they're going to feel. I've even gone through the process of putting a wanted board, like they would see in most taverns or inns, into the document itself, right? Just made little wanted posters and, grab a picture of somebody and this so-and-so wanted, dead or alive. And that way, the player characters start to ask questions about these NPCs that are wanted. And, at one point I actually snuck one of the PCs into there as the PC became wanted. And that was a lot of fun when that player, actually another player pointed it out, and he was like, what, I'm wanted? And it was fun. It was a good time. And it fit into the story, and him working to basically get off the wanted list from the Bounty Hunters Guild was just another aspect for the players to go through, another story, another little arc that the players had to deal with. But that's it, and once you have that content there and they can access it, your players are all, free to look at it and learn it. And the better and the more that they do, the more you have for them to learn, the more your world comes to life. And that's the goal. That really is the goal, is to bring your world to life. It's not always in the micro detail, but the more micro detail you can put where the PCs are, the more to life it will become. Again, start small, start where the PCs are going to be, and build outwards. That way as the PCs start to move away from wherever they started, you're ready for them there. If you never anticipate them going past a certain mountain range until certain levels, and as a DM, you have the encouraged railroad to kind of keep them, in a certain place, then you don't have to worry about it. Build that later. Build that when it's coming. But these are the tips and tricks that I use and have used to build multiple campaign worlds. And I hope you take away something that I've talked about here today to help your world, bring more life to it, right, and more enjoyment, which is the goal for all of us. So that's all the time we have for today. World building is a lot of fun. And as a DM, it's one of my favorite things to do, is to build a world. But next to that is really breathing that life into the world, continuing to run the world, adding different NPCs, adding different objectives, and new places of mystery. I love developing the rumor tables, working with the deities. What are they doing? What are their motivations behind the scenes? And, and all of these aspects of just bringing the world to life. Remember, start small, where the PCs are going to be, and then work your way outward. You don't have to do everything at once. Leverage those tools out there like Incarnate, and also, use a place where the PCs can get the information. Facebook, WordPress, whether it's a design tool like Figma, or, anything else that's out there, or maybe it's just a PDF that you're going to share. Getting the information to your players is key, right? The more they can read about it and learn, the more they're going to enjoy your world and understand how to operate within it. So make sure you like and share, and thanks for joining us again on Dungeon Masters Inc.